This episode is sponsored by Jacobson Real Estate Company. Are you ready to find your dream home? Or maybe you're thinking about selling and want the best deal possible? Well, look no further. At Jacobson Real Estate Company, we make buying or selling your home smooth, stress-free, and exciting. With 50 plus years of experience and a deep knowledge of the Winona, Minnesota area market, we specialize in turning your real estate goals into reality. Whether it's finding that perfect neighborhood, negotiating top dollar for your property, or answering all of your questions along the way, we're here for you. Plus, with our personalized approach, you're not just a client, you're family. So why wait? Let Jacobson Real Estate Company open the door to your future. Call us today at 507-313-2716 or visit our website at jacobsonrealestatecompany.com. Because your next chapter starts here. Buy, sell, invest. Jacobson Real Estate Company. Welcome to this week's edition of Brews and Crews. I am your host, Chris Jacobson, and today we are going to be talking more local today about possible housing shortages, the zoning, also talk about Engage Winona, and also with Dan Wilson here, he's going to talk about himself running for state senate, which you've already done in 2022, and you're going to be running again as well.
And State House in
State
2026.
House.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Different seat, but yes.
Now, you brought me a gift, which I love when someone brings me a gift, and you brought me, I'm not going to try to not butcher this, but it says Ida Graves Distillery. Am I right?
Exactly. My brother-in-law and my sister started that distillery in Alexandria, Minnesota. And so it's Sommel, which is essentially just like distilled mead.
Okay. Now, I had my brother-in-law, he's big into Norwegian stuff because his family background is from that. And he makes his own mead. So when you said mead, now I actually know what that is because he came on the podcast. And this was almost 2 years ago. He came on and we talked about how he makes his own mead. And then I see on here it says spirits distilled from honey, like you said, and with other natural flavors. And it says bottled and approved by BB.
Brock Berglund.
So that's
my brother-in-law, and that's the distiller's name. Yep.
So have you been there then, I assume, before?
Yeah. Yep. They just built a tasting room last year, and it's on their farm. And it's a beautiful setup, and distilling machinery looks wild. It's just these giant copper kettles, and yeah, it's super cool.
Well, it says it's 70 proof, which means it's only 35% alcohol, so it's not that hardcore, I guess, because there's some that are 100 proof and others. This one's a little bit more laid back, which is awesome. So thank you for bringing this. I'm going to have this, and you're going to have some Coors NA.
Yeah, I had a family member die from cancer this year.
Okay.
And so I have some genetic disposition to cancer, so just drinking less alcohol because of its connection to cancer risk.
Yeah.
And turns out a lot of domestic beers taste the same as NA, which is great. And then so you can have like a day beer and do day drinking and you don't feel it at all.
Well, I can't wait to try this. I love when someone brings me in something unique that I've never had, never heard of. That's cool. And these are really small batches too, which means you got to probably go there and get these things.
Yes, exactly. Yep,
well,
that was a gift from him. And so since I'm not drinking alcohol, I'm not going to drink it. And yeah, that's great stuff.
Perfect. Well, cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me on.
Well, and thanks for getting a hold of me, because you actually got a hold of me on my website, which very few people get a hold of me on my website. Usually it's on Facebook. I get most of the messages for people, and you actually did on my website, and I'm still learning how to get all those messages that people contact you on directly to my phone, and I finally did, and that's when I said, holy cow, this one's been there for almost 2 months, and that's perfect. So I got to try this real quick.
Yeah, for sure. I am also figuring out how to get websites to talk to each other and things like that. It's a whole tech battle. Yeah.
This is really easy to drink.
Nice.
So this could be dangerous for some people because you can definitely taste a little bit of the honey within it, and it's actually very very smooth. So that could be dangerous, but nicely done. Ida Graves and Brock what?
Brock Berglund.
Brock Berglund.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I appreciate you coming on in, and you want to talk about some of the housing issues within Winona.
Yeah.
And but the first thing is you were part of a group called Engage Winona, and I know I don't know much about it, but I have seen the logo. It's like an E, and it's like a box shape with a blue and a light blue, if I remember, and there's an E within it.
EW.
Can you explain what Engage Winona is and what it does? And I know you got some notes here, so feel free to use them, please.
For sure. So Engage Winona, I no longer work for them, but I worked for them for 2 years. They do primarily civic engagement work, right? Like, how do we get folks in Winona more engaged in like city government and county government, like more participating in like the civic process? And so after doing that work for years and years, like helping promote surveys and things like that, the thing that like kept coming up over and over again was housing. And so they got approached by a statewide group, a statewide funder, saying like, hey, do you want to start this program working with folks that have lived experience, folks that have been homeless before, and like training them on being housing advocates? So Engage Winona, it worked out really well because they've been hearing housing has been an issue for years. And one of the other programs that they run is lived experience leaders. So like taking folks that have, like a classic example is someone that struggled with drug addiction, now wants to start a nonprofit addressing drug addiction. How do you like teach that person? How do you like start a nonprofit? How do you do fundraising? And kind of like walking them through those steps. So the Winona Area Kitchen Table was the program that I worked at on Engage Winona. Just essentially like the same process for housing. Like, you've had struggles with housing before in the past. Like, how do you become an advocate for housing in Winona? And specifically, all of the work that I did there was researching policy and like researching what solutions are to housing, what other communities in Minnesota have done, and like what might make sense for Winona to do.
Gotcha. Now, did you say this is a nonprofit? So
Correct.
Engage Winona is, so it's all pretty much volunteer work, right?
It has a paid staff of like 3 folks.
Okay.
I was working there part-time just to help keep their overheads low as well. But,
sure.
So since they're a nonprofit, just like promoting issues in Winona and like,
Okay, so this is specifically to Winona community in our area here.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so gotcha. Now, I've seen it. I look at the photos that are on the website, which is engagewinona.org for those who are listening. I notice a lot of people that I recognize within the photos.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot of people I think they are part of our Winona community. And our Winona community, I've said this before in the podcast, some people, as you grow up, they go, oh, I don't want to stay in Winona. But Winona actually has a big, large, supportive group of people that I don't think everyone understands.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think, oh, well, yeah, they don't care about us. They don't. But actually, there's a lot of groups out there, Engage Winona being one of them, that really cares about the community's best interest at heart.
Winona's like I love Winona so much. And like, I feel like Engage Winona is like a classic example of that. There's just so many different groups in Winona that are like trying to promote Winona and like trying to make Winona better. And like Marcy Ratliff is the executive director of Engage Winona. She has done an amazing job over the past couple of years just getting folks involved, right? Like, it's not even like the kitchen table is their only program, and it like will kind of sunlight next year, but that's the only program that has like any particular issue focus. Other than that, it's mostly just like, hey, I don't care what you should show up and speak at meetings. You should show up, get involved. I don't care what you're getting involved about, but like, our community is better and more people show up.
Sure. Now, can you explain what the Winona table or kitchen table is all about? Because I'm looking on the website and it talks about it right here, but I would love you, because you work there.
Yeah.
Give us a better idea of what this is all about.
For sure. So Nadia Young is the coordinator for that right now. But when I was working there, right, how do we, so we kind of walked through the process as a group of folks, looking at like what is the housing situation in Winona? What are some of the root causes to that, and how can we work to solving those?
Sure.
And so we've done kind of a wide variety of work, anywhere from taking everyone up to St. Paul and testifying at public hearings or testifying before committees, to like going to city council and like speaking in favor or opposition to like decisions that the city council is making.
Sure.
And like helping them. Also like helping, and a lot of the work that I did specifically with the kitchen table is taking a look at the county housing study. So we took a look at that. I like broke it down into a much more easy to read, bullet pointed report, and just presented on that and presented that county housing study back to the community, because there's a lot of like wild information in there that like I think challenges a lot of assumptions that people have about housing in Winona. And the county and the city spent thousands of dollars to make this report, and then like a lot of reports that happen, they just kind of take it and then shelve it.
Sure.
And then like all that information that was learned, like maybe sits in the head of a few policymakers, but otherwise it just kind of like goes back into the ether. So like I took it upon myself to be like, hey, this is like super important information that affects all of us. Like, let's talk about it and like, let's all understand what's going on here.
So the kitchen table, if I had to look at that, I thought it was like you guys were feeding homeless people.
Yeah. With the idea of, so the kitchen, like that title was part of, it was, there's 3 other kitchen tables across the state.
Okay.
So Winona, so we didn't get to choose the name.
Okay. Gotcha. So
but
it wasn't
like the
up to
idea of like having kind of like similar podcasts, right? Like having informal conversations at your kitchen table, right? Is like where solutions come up, where like, you know, where people talk about things that are important to them.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like a round table is what it sounds like. I've heard that conversation before. Okay, so good, because I thought it was about feeding homeless people or people that are in need of food. But that makes more sense. It's like you're sitting around a kitchen table talking just to everybody. But you guys didn't make up the name. It's just part of other programs that are out there. That makes way more sense. So what was your actual job that you did with Engage Winona?
Policy associate, right? So like really just like looking at housing policy, looking at the county housing study, and like thinking of and like giving presentations to the kitchen table to be like, okay, like what does zoning mean? Like when we say single family zoning, like what does that mean? Or we say like what does affordable housing mean? Because like affordable housing, workforce housing, market rate housing, there's like those 3 terms all mean the same kind of housing, but there's 3 different ways to describe it.
Okay.
So just basically taking a look at like, there's a lot of like when we talk about housing, things like we make them kind of unnecessarily complicated. How do we simplify things? And like to the best of our ability, how do we like kind of start chipping away at like those core issues?
Sure. So can you go over those 3 that sound exactly the same but almost mean the same?
Market rate housing, affordable housing, workforce housing.
Yeah, I think that's what you said at the beginning of it.
So like essentially in Winona, it's super interesting. So affordable housing classically means 80% of the area median income. So like 80% of like what the average person makes in Winona. Okay. And in Winona, that 80% is, or like for the state of Minnesota, this 80% of the state median income is technically like market rates in Winona. So like somebody paying, I think it's like around $1,000 per month in rent, that it would be, if you were paying that amount in Minneapolis or St. Paul, that would not be market rate up there. That would be technically affordable because that's 80% of Minnesota's AMI. But in Winona, that is market rate. So like Winona is an interesting city in the sense that you can have something that is market rate for Winona, but also receive some state affordable housing dollars because it is statewide, it is affordable housing. But in Winona, it's market rate. And market rate and workforce is like the exact same thing. It's just like to say like, it's the branding of it to like kind of like convince businesses and other folks of like, hey, if you want to expand your business, those workers have to live someplace, right? And so I think that is a huge problem in Winona, like because we have some amazing businesses here, like some of the leaders in the state, but they are having a hard time expanding and hiring qualified folks because there's just like no place for them to live. Sure. So like really like the theory of economic development in the greater Minnesota right now like needs to be focused on not like how can we attract more big businesses or like industries to our area, but like how can we build more housing? Okay. Because like those units of housing are going to just like grow the economy more than like we could build a factory, Amazon could have a warehouse down here, but if all those workers live in Wisconsin, like that's not really going to do much for us. Sure. So there was this wild statistic that from the U of M that found in Otter Tail County a unit of, if you were to build if you build a duplex in the community, one of those units in that duplex creates $70,000 of economic activity in that community per year, right? So it's just like you can view housing as like it's a human right, like we all need a place to live, like yeah, sure, but also like if you want to grow our economy, like building, like building 100 duplexes is going to grow our economy in a way more equitable way, an exciting way than like getting like another Amazon or something like that to come down here.
Sure. So I look at the map in Winona. It's a lot of orange, which indicates it's R2. Mm-hmm. And so are you part of that? Is that what you were looking at when you were looking at, you look at the Winona zoning map when you went to discuss this?
A lot of the statewide, a lot of the big efforts around zoning in Minnesota are done at a state level.
Okay.
There are some local groups. There are that organizing and kind of that work is starting to move down to a local level. So I was involved with this group called Yes to Homes. And so they're a really interesting kind of like a statewide advocacy team that existed of just kind of like this like odd bedfellows combination of like realtors, trades groups, Americans for Prosperity, kind of like a way more conservative advocacy group, and then also like all these other whatever social justice groups,
Sure.
like all coming together and being like, hey, we need to adjust our zoning so that we can build more housing.
Gotcha.
So it's like zoning has become like a really interesting, I think housing in general is like a super interesting political place to talk about, because it's just like, I don't care what your like predisposition is, where you're coming from, like let's look at the results. And like time and time again, like we see that the best way to make housing more affordable is just to build more of it.
Sure.
So Minneapolis, St. Paul is this like super interesting example, right? Like Minneapolis passed a bunch of zoning reforms just to make their zoning easier for folks to build more density, like slightly more density, not anything too wild. And then right across the river, St. Paul passed rent restriction reforms, right, where you can't increase your rent above a certain amount per year.
Okay.
And during a 5-year period, Minneapolis's population increased pretty drastically, and their rents stayed the same. And St. Paul's population decreased, and their rents went up.
Okay.
And so St. Paul has scrapped their rent control and are now pursuing more of like the zoning reforms. Like, so
Gotcha.
even just from like a straight looking at the results, if you want to stabilize rents, if you want to grow the economy, you like just build more housing.
Sure. So when you're talking about housing, you're talking about rentals, right? Mm-hmm. You're not talking about single family residence.
All the above.
All the above.
Right?
Okay,
like
all the above.
Yeah, that's the exciting thing about the housing study, right? It's just like I think that Winona housing study is super interesting to look at, because there's nothing in there for any one group to be like, I was right, this is the thing, we need more of this. It's like everything. We need everything. Like,
sure.
We need luxury condos, we need single family homes, we need apartments, we need like super affordable housing for seniors, right? Like any kind of housing that exists, like Winona needs more of it.
Well, as an agent, I can't say that single families, the market determines on the price. However, with rents, a little different story, because we do have a lot of new things coming into town, and a lot of them are luxury related. In my mind, they're luxury related, because I see the new stuff coming into town. Fastenal's building 2 main squares now. They have a main square east, a main square west. Mm-hmm. I know Mike Rivers and associates. I don't know who else is with him. I think I know who they are, but I don't want to say the name just because I'm not 100% sure. But it sounds like their apartments are starting at about $1,800. Now in Winona, that's kind of expensive. You go up to the cities, that's pretty standard. And the reason I know that is because my cousin rents a 900 square foot apartment for $1,800. And I go, that's my mortgage.
Right.
That's a lot of money. But we also have a lot of jobs coming down to the Winona downtown lately, which is really, in my lifetime since I've been here. And I know that you're from La Crosse, right?
I grew up in Worthington.
Okay.
And moved here in 06.
In 06. Yep. So for my lifetime, watching all this stuff now get really big downtown, it's kind of crazy. I feel like we're in this, we're obviously not a Rochester or anything like that, but it's really kind of a unique thing to see all this money starting to come downtown, because about 10 years ago, you come downtown and man, there's businesses just folding up and not wanting to be down here. And now all of a sudden there's new places coming into town here, which I'm like, this is really exciting to be downtown, because that's where this is located. That's where our real estate office is located. So I think that's really, really neat to see all the money coming in. But I can't say $1,800 is affordable for everybody, because a lot of people could just get a house, and your mortgage payment would be that or less, depending on what you purchase, obviously. So
Yeah.
I really am interested to hear about your thoughts on the Winona, because Winona doesn't have a large place to expand to. So like
Yeah.
for anybody that's listening that's not from Winona, we are what's considered an island town. And what I mean by that is you come down from a 600-foot cliff or bluff, and then you're right next to the Mississippi River. So you can only expand north and south roughly, but some of it's swampland.
Right.
So trying to expand basically means you got to buy out something, buy out blocks of houses,
Yeah.
tear them down, and then rebuild. So Winona doesn't have that awesome like expansion. Like when I think of Rochester, it's starting to expand to like Eota now.
Right.
So when you go to Eota or even Dover now,
Right.
it's getting very close to that and almost to St. Charles at this point, because
Yeah.
it's just getting so big.
I would say, like, so one, to talk about downtown housing. Downtown housing to me is like one of those things that's like everyone can agree on it, right? Of just like, that's an area where folks are like, yeah, I totally want an apartment building there. Yeah, we totally want high density. And also, when you build for downtown businesses, for every 1 unit of housing that you build downtown, you generate $1,400 a month of economic activity. Right, so if you want like new restaurants, new bars, new like clothing businesses to succeed in downtown, like, yeah, we could give them a tax break, or we could like pay for some of the exterior renovations, or we could build an apartment building next to that business, and like you're gonna have 100 customers living right next door that want to use that business. And then like as far as like the amount of land in Winona, the county housing study, right, like took a look at the amount of housing the city and the county will need in the next 5 years, and they looked at our land base and were like, the amount of land that Winona has is enough to build the amount of housing that Winona needs. So it is more like a perceived scarcity, and it's also right. I think with housing in Winona, it's not that we have a lack of man, it's a lack of land. It's we have a lack of imagination, and so there's this thing called infill, right, which is like maybe it's not tearing down a whole block, but it's like taking a single family home and turning it into a triplex or a duplex, right? And for like new homeowners, folks our age that are looking to buy a home, that's often the easiest path to entry, is if they can offset their mortgage with like some kind of rental income. And so there's actually like a lot of opportunities and a lot of ways for Winona to build the housing that it needs without like expanding onto like the sensitive areas and the bluffs. And it is like Winona like is like very physically landlocked by the river and the swamps and things like that. But like other communities in Greater Minnesota face very comparable problems, like St. Charles, Lewiston, communities that are surrounded by farmland and things like that. Like in the Lewiston area, they are landlocked because I think understandably none of the farmers want to like give up any of that land.
Sure.
And so they need to grow and expand and can't necessarily kind of expand out in the way that like Rochester or other cities can. And so there's just like dozens of communities like that in Minnesota. And I think Winona like loves to view its own problems as like specific to Winona. Like Winona is like unique in these ways. And I think Winona is unique in a ton of ways. But like that's why a lot of the zoning stuff has happened at a state level, because a lot of those problems that like overly restrictive zoning can cause are not unique to any one city. They're kind of across the state.
Gotcha. So you just told us that there's places that actually you can build, and Winona just maybe isn't imaginative enough. Can you give us examples in Winona where to build? Because if people from Winona are listening to this, they're going to know what you're talking about.
I know, right? Like it's one of those things of it really is like putting on a housing glasses or like a housing lens. And so the experience of researching this for my job, researching this for Engage Winona was like really transforming, of just like kind of like opening my eyes and being like, yeah, like this isn't a left-right issue. This is just about like how do we prioritize results? How do we prioritize getting things done? And if you like look around Winona, you'll see like a half lot just sitting empty, or you'll see big green spaces. And so even like downtown, you'll see big parking lots that are maybe full for like are half full like for an hour or so a day, right?
Sure.
So it's like, right, I think when we think about housing, we always like think about like what is the next like big valley, what is like the next big plot of land that we can do a lot of housing. But like because that is how housing has been done for the past 50 years. Like there's the old adage, right, of just like it's always easier to build where no one lives currently, and it's always harder to build where people are currently living. And so like the space that exists for Winona to be able to build is like maybe it's not zoned in like the most convenient kind of zoning, so to require a slight change or a requested zoning change. Like those two big lots behind Menards and Walmart are the ones that I always drive by, and I think like, yeah, you could have two giant mixed-use apartment buildings there with like restaurants or businesses downstairs and then units above it.
Okay.
But it's not zoned for that right now, right? Like, so taking commercial zoning and changing commercial so that you could put residential within zoning. Sure. Or even all the riverfront properties, the one by the Fastenal shop on the river by the river is adjacent to industrial. And so like maybe I would be interested to see what an air quality report would look like in that area, because like I think that area probably was much more industrial 20 years ago and is less so now, right? So there's some big empty lots there, or those areas that could be expanded, and so it's like it's a thing that the city does not talk a lot about openly, because there are like all the land is owned. And so if you like, right, with the Walmart Menards example, like saying like, hey, that would make a great spot for it, then the city doesn't talk about it because the owner calls up the city and is like, are you trying to sell my land out from underneath me? Right. So it's like the city generally does a really good job of like approaching landowners and be like, hey, I think this would be a great opportunity for this space. But that's like, and this becomes an issue with single family and new construction in Winona as well, right? Like if a house, I mean, Winona is a really interesting city because it has such a high percentage of old homes, because it is so difficult to rebuild something on top of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you keep the old home, then it's grandfathered in. But like if you were to tear down a house, you can't just build in that same footprint that was there. You now have to update to the new zoning, and everything has to be smaller and more smaller and farther away from stuff. So in order for someone to build a home, right, like a lot of times you almost need a lawyer to like do this process. Mm-hmm. And so Bloomington, Indiana has what they call like a pattern book model, where like the city just has like an approved 2025 new single family duplex, triplex plans that are approved, and like any builder can go grab that plan off the shelf, and if that plan like fits in the lot, they can put it there, and they don't need to go to like a board of adjustments, don't need to go to like a dozen city meetings to make it happen. And so that's a way in which like the city can step in and like very actively reduce the cost of a house by like 20 or 30 grand.
Gotcha.
By just saying like, hey, these are plans. If you use that plan, you can build that plan. Like that takes the architecture costs out, that takes the like development time down. So like a lot of it is market stuff, and the market in Winona is hard because like a lot of development goes to the city, because as you said, you can charge higher in rent, but there's a lot of things that the city can do for, without charging more in taxes, by just like making it easier for developers to do kinds of development that folks have talked about wanting to see happen in Winona.
Well, I can tell you, I just got my proposed taxes for 2026. It went up 13.82%.
Yeah.
That's rough on a homeowner.
It is. That's the thing. We're like, if we want to pay less in taxes, right, then like let's have more people live in Winona and less people live in Fountain City, right? Fountain City's best economic development plan is Winona having a bad housing market. So, right, so about half of Winona's population, like 12,000 people, drive into town every day for work. So if there are more people living in the city paying property taxes, right, like it's the tax levy is like a set dollar amount. If there's more people paying that set dollar amount, everyone pays less. And so like from an economic development perspective, from like a lowering taxes perspective, like having more folks live in the city like just benefits so many things.
Sure. So what you're saying is if there was a housing complex and they had so many people in it that our taxes could possibly go down because that developer would be paying a portion of the taxes for the property, right?
Or if there was 1,000 more people living in the city of Winona, the city has that same levy, and you just divide it by another 1,000 people, so everyone pays a little bit less.
Sure,
because
gotcha.
there's just more people paying that city tax.
Well, I did notice what was it? I think we lost according to the last census, we lost like 2,000 people, it sounds like. Because I remember coming into town, I always know it was
Yeah,
27,069 people lived here. But then I just had a trivia question come up at the brewery, and it was like 25,000 something. So that means we lost roughly 1,500 to 2,000 people at some point. I don't know where it was or why it may have become so.
So, I mean, I think this is like, housing is so interesting because it's so much of it, and that's why I think Engage Winona started doing that work, because so much of it is just like this narrative work in the sense of like, what's the story that Winona's telling about itself? And that census number is something I hear all the time of like, Winona's shrinking, or we're not going to grow anymore. We're a shrinking city. We need to manage for shrinking. And it's like, that's a choice, right? We can choose to shrink or we can choose to grow.
Sure.
And a lot of the bigger demographic things that determine the size of towns in greater Minnesota is this dynamic of the population generally is getting older in greater Minnesota, which means that like a 5-person household, like 2 adults, 3 kids, within the past like 10 years, those 3 kids have moved out of the city. Maybe they go to college in someplace else. Maybe they just moved into a different home. So like the per household size has just shrunk because kids have moved out.
Yeah.
And so there are some people who are thinking like, as those 2-person households, as those folks like age out or pass away, the number one demographic that moves to small cities in greater Minnesota are small families. So it's completely reasonable that on its own, the population just might increase as household size increases because more small families move to the area. But I think, I think Winona is an amazing place to live. It's like, has amazing arts and culture, has like this amazing environment. Like I stayed in Winona because I love Winona. I think Winona could be one of the fastest growing cities in Minnesota. And the reason why we're not is because it's so hard to find a place to buy a home, so hard to find a place to rent.
Sure. Now, I'm looking at the map of the zoning, and where you were talking about, which is behind Menards and that area in Fleet Farm, it is kind of swampland. I'm looking, and it looks like it's a dark blue, which on here, if anybody's listening, it's industrial or heavy industrial. It's not even light industrial, it's heavy, which is indoor and outdoor industrial facilities, commercial uses, no dwellings. Now, does someone personal own that land, or does the city own that land?
The city doesn't own too much land. A lot of it is the Port Authority owns some. So a lot of how that works is that the Port Authority will buy land, and so that chunk of land that's like right next to where the farmers market always happens.
Yep.
The old HBC building the Wizards. Yeah, so it was an HBC.
Yep.
So they finished buying, Port Authority bought that chunk. And so a lot of times what the Port Authority does is tries to create a larger parcel of land so that they can then approach a developer with that. So I think like a perfect example of like where can we put housing in Winona is Water's Edge. That housing development on Mankato.
Yep.
And I drove by that place for years and years and years and never even noticed it. And then finally they started building on it, and I was like, oh, there's like a good sized chunk of land, right? Like I think there's just so many small parcels in the city that we like go by all the time and we don't think about. And so what is difficult about Winona is like, and that's why I say like we want to make it easier for our neighbors to build more homes for their neighbors. Because Water's Edge was built by just like a large contractor they're like a regional contractor. They build affordable housing. They'll come in, they'll do affordable housing, and then they'll leave. And they approach cities and are like, hey, this is what we build. It is this size. And if you don't have a plot of land that fits this thing, then we're going to the next city.
Gotcha. And
so like Winona has so many interesting small plots or weirdly sized plots that like, I want to see more small developers that drop a new plan to fit this weird looking lot to build to infill the existing in the Winona.
Gotcha.
And so what the Port Authority does, which is great, and the city development office, which does a great job doing it, is kind of like waiting until they have a batch of lots that they can like then approach a developer.
Gotcha.
And say like, hey, this is kind of meets the minimum lot size for you. Like, is this something you're interested in doing? But the problem with like large affordable projects is that those only come along like once every 10 years. It seems to be the schedule for that.
Sure.
So like this is why like market rate, again, like the more units that you build, it can just like stabilize rents for everybody. And so like, luxury apartments, I think, especially coming from the kitchen table, coming from that background of folks looking for more affordable housing, there's a lot of like scoffing at that and things like that. But the reality is like a luxury unit now is affordable in 30 years.
Sure.
Right? Like there is like it is, it's one of those things that makes my head spin, because it's just like, I did not believe any of this stuff until I just started like doing the research on housing. It's just like, yeah, study after study, like city after city just like bears this out of like building housing of all types, right? Like just really helps everyone out in the city.
Do you have a structure of what size unit would be, and then the monthly rent is considered affordable? Is there some sort of...
Hey,
Look it up.
Okay, there is an AMI chart.
Yeah, please, because I'm going to go off of this because I know that there's going to be people that are landlords that might listen to this and go, well, that's pretty hard to have affordable housing in whatever you may say it is, according to the study.
Yep.
And they say, well, we got to make a profit too, because we're the one obviously building it, taking the risk, and obviously have to house the tenants in there. And there's not every tenant is a good tenant, just so people know.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
easier said than done a lot of the times. So I also want to play devil's advocate with you and go from the landlord, property owners side of things, because you brought up Water's Edge, and I don't even know what their rents are.
Right. So like, again, the terms are so confusing. So affordable housing, like that term will usually refers to like the government is stepping in and kicking some back to the landlord. And so
That'd be like Section 8, right?
There's Section 8 is an option, but there's are other ways of doing it as well.
Okay.
So if it's not Section 8, it might usually just be a larger chunk of money up front to be like, so this, one of the things that the Winona Area Kitchen Table did was that we helped the city create an affordable housing trust fund.
Gotcha.
Which means basically like if you build a triplex and you commit to having one of those units be affordable, meaning that you're going to like rent to somebody who makes the 80% of the area median income. And like, I think the area median income is like 60 grand in Winona. So somebody that makes like $55,000 a year. If you commit to renting to somebody in that income range for the next 10 years, we will give you 10 grand.
Okay.
Right? So usually if it's not Section 8, then it's usually more of like a chunk of money up front. So if the affordable housing at Water's Edge is Section 8. And I think, again, like we want more local control, more local builders, because their property manager, it's a regional group that owns that building. So they hire a regional property manager who's out of Rochester. And so the super, right, like they have a lot of cameras in there, and they like monitor residents that way. And then we'll like send them an email saying like, hey, you've committed an infraction, things like that. So it's like, it's a fine place to live, and folks might disagree with me on that, but like something like the Winona HRA, Maplewood Townhomes, folks generally enjoy living there more because there's like a much more personal touch.
Sure.
Right? Like your super, someone there. And so it's like those big affordable housing projects are fine, but we like, especially my work with the kitchen table, like folks that have lived in those units, folks generally don't like to live in subsidized housing. They want like something that's market rate, something that they know that they've earned. And so like, let's just build more of those. And so for, like, I don't think any landlord should charge less than what the market will bear. Like landlords need to make their money back. They're like out there for a profit as well. So landlords should do that. And I think like we need to focus on creating more housing so that like, I'm interested in renters being able to have multiple options to choose from for what works best.
Sure.
Because I think that like that helps landlords, that kind of raises the bar for the kind of housing that they provide. Because a landlord, the way that it is right now is that like there's not a lot of options for folks. So there's like not market pressure for landlords to provide good housing. Like the landlords that I know I've talked with, like, and I think my experience with a lot of folks is they want to provide good housing because like they like are good people. But like I think having that market pressure of like knowing like, oh, if I'm not providing a competitive product, a student or like a person can go someplace else too.
Yeah. Well, and I know there's a lot of people that I know that have college housing, and those kids just ruin the house for the most part. Not every college kid's the same. In this same thing, like not every person that has Section 8 is going to destroy your property. Sometimes the stereotype takes over, and it happens. I mean, college kids are going to party. It just kind of is what it is. So you don't have to provide as great of a product because it's probably going to get destroyed, and then it's going to come out of your personal pocket, and you didn't make enough rent in order to cover all their damages and stuff of that nature. So I totally get that. And so I like to look at it from a the landlord's standpoint as well. Another question I have, because I know this one's really a big uproar in Winona, it's the new hotel. 44 North came in, and a portion of it, which is actually kind of a small portion of it, is apartments, and then the other portion is a hotel. And there's a lot of people that had... I saw on Facebook. Now I take
Winona
Facebook.
Winona is on Facebook.
Yes.
Winona loves Facebook,
and everything comes with a grain of salt.
Yep.
So I was wondering what you think about that, and then the two main squares. I mean, there's obviously Main Square East, and then the other one's being built. And Kierland, the Fastenal Group, has buying all of those properties around it. So I know those people that are around that area where that new orchestra hall is coming, they got 2, 3, 4 times their market value in their houses. So they aren't like giving you dirt cheap prices and here we're going to buy this. No, they're giving you huge sums of money to buy this and then build housing. I was wondering what your thoughts are on those new projects, because I know that's just a hot topic right now in Winona. What are your thoughts on those new projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the hotel, right, like, there's a lot of hubbub around that property being sold for like $1 or something like that.
Yeah, I heard that. That's one of the things I heard.
Yep. But it's also like, I get that does stink. But at the same time, right, like, it was an empty parking lot. So like, either like the city's going to get revenue from that project, from taxes, from folks living in those apartments, from the business tax, and it's going to create, like, again, all this economic activity that happens with stuff downtown.
Yep.
Either the city can do that or it can continue to sit on an asset and just like lose money on it.
Sure.
So like, yeah, that's a bummer, but also, like, again, to your point, developers need to make money. And I think, like, and especially local developers, which I know, like, both of those projects are, of just like, for so many local developers and builders, like, they could, more than likely, they can make more money by just putting their money in the stock market, right? So like, my general thought is like, hey, if you want to build something in Winona, you're coming at it from a place of like, I want to make my community better. Mm-hmm. That's great. Like, I think there's that like assumed goodwill of like, you could go through the headache of like building a hotel downtown, get a lot of flack for like getting a sweetheart deal on the land. You know, you're going to make more money if you just take that same chunk of money and put it in the stock market.
Right.
So if you're like willing to go through all that, it's because like, hey, you have a vision for Winona that you want to see and you want to see our community get better. That's awesome. And so like the same deal with Fastenal, those buildings of just like, especially seeing demolishing a bunch of buildings, like, gosh, that's hard to see. But like, again, I know that they have a vision for Winona, and like there are some aspects of the vision I probably don't agree with, but like if you're going to demolish buildings, what goes in its place, like if it's density, if it's more units, like I understand that. And I think that's probably good.
Yeah, and that's what you were just talking about. You said
We
for
just
every
need more density.
Yeah, you said the more
Downtown.
people that are here, the more that it raises revenue in that area or in the Winona community itself.
Right.
Now you bring that stuff downtown, and that now all of a sudden, and I've noticed over just the past couple of years, we started getting new restaurants. Now, granted, they're not franchise restaurants, and that's okay because I like supporting my community member. I mean, I just had Andre Klinecki on a couple weeks ago with the Black Horse.
Yeah.
He said that if he were to have sold that land, it was basically useless. So
Yes,
he was
exactly. I heard
grandfathered
that.
in,
Yep.
which we talked about.
Yep.
So he said, if I didn't build on that, it was basically useless land. So I might as well build back on it. Going downtown now, you bring in the new hotel / apartment building. Okay, so right around there, you have Sliced, you have the Lafayette drink cocktail lounge, you have Two Brothers sports bar, Nosh,
Right.
Urbers and Gerbers. So there's actually a lot of stuff downtown. And granted, most of it's not franchise, which sometimes is really cool because you get this personalized experience. You go in and you know the person. And then also coming over to Main Square, granted, you said, I may not agree with all the things they're tearing down, but in the grand scheme of things, in your vision, it makes a lot of sense. And being that Bob Kierland and the founders of Fastenal are Winona natives, they're not like someone that came from California, demolished things and go, this is the way this is the way I think it should be. You have literally local people putting their money back into the Winona community in order to grow it and make it better. And I think it's fantastic because, I mean, Main Square East looks really nice, I think. I don't know what the rents are there, so I can't talk on that. But they have their lower level, which is all commercial. There's a new restaurant there and stuff of that nature.
Right.
So I think it's a great thing. I love that new things are happening in Winona.
Right.
I know that a lot of people on Facebook, they just like to air out their grievances. They just hate it. and maybe they don't have the money to do those things. But
Well-
and I also understand that. Yes, they sold off that parking lot for $1, and
Right.
people go, "Oh, there goes our theater parking lot." I'm like,
Right.
how many people go to the movie theater anymore?
And like housing, I mean, right, this is why it's always easier to build where people don't live, because like the concerns and fears that people have around new housing development is super founded, right? Like the biggest asset that people will buy is their house. Like that is where the majority of their money is tied up. And if you come in and you do anything that might mess that up or reduce your property values, that is like super scary to you personally. Super understandable. Again, like let's follow the facts. The reality is, right, like if Winona's population starts to grow over the next several years and Winona becomes an exciting place to live, your property values are going to go up.
Yeah.
Right? Like just study after study after study shows that the more housing we have in a community, it increases property values. So like we don't often talk about like, hey, if a duplex goes in, if we take a single family home and that turns into a duplex next door to you, like that is scary because there's a sense of like what that change might mean. But like 9 times out of 10, that changes for the better, and that is going to profit you personally when you when you end up going to sell your house.
Yep.
So like I'm super sensitive to those concerns. Like I really understand that because it is really like those conversations get to be super personal because all of a sudden you're talking about people's savings. And like that is why it's so hard to have these conversations around zoning, conversations around infill, because not only are you talking about like the character of a neighborhood or how you remember this neighborhood being 20 years ago, which is scary, but then you're also talking about like what is going to happen to your investment in this house.
Sure.
So like I think that is the model of a civic engagement is just like, yeah, let's create a space to talk about it. Like your concerns are super valid in this instance. It is scary. Like things changing is always unsettling. That change potentially affecting your pocketbook is even more unsettling. But let's talk about it. Like, let's look at the facts. And so like, that's why some cities employ public relations folks just to like have a person doing that full time to be like, hey, let's like have this conversation. Because like 9 times out of 10, those changes are going to help the neighborhood. But it's a really big hurdle for folks to jump over.
Yes. And, I always tell people when you buy a house, and this is just from me owning houses since 2015, this is single family residence I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Every year, roughly, the average cost of my house in value has gone up $10,000 on average. Some less, some more. COVID year, everything went crazy.
Right.
And then now it's kind of tamed down a little bit. But I always tell people if you're going to buy a single family home, you're most likely going to make $10,000 a year. Now, granted, you might buy your next home and then that one's going to be at an inflated price. But at the end of the day, real estate's a slow investment.
Right.
By the time you retire and you want to sell your house and you probably have it all paid off, you're going to have this really awesome investment. So I always tell people that. So I'm like, you rent for a little while, get your feet stable. Then if you can and you're able to afford a home, which, my dad, he's an accountant. And he's like, he goes, when I started working, it was $1 an hour. He goes, when kids start working now, it's like $15 an hour. And that's at McDonald's. And I actually had students that used to work at McDonald's. That was their first job. They were making $10, $11, $12 an hour. And my dad goes, when I was working for $1 an hour when I was 14 years old, he goes, they should be able to afford a whole bunch of things. But I think what happens is we have a lot of expenses we forget about, like subscriptions.
Yes.
where it does make it hard to afford things because you forget all of a sudden, oh yeah, I remember I bought this subscription to this, I bought that subscription to that. It's all about convenience nowadays. Back in the day, you just kind of had to be hardcore, and go about and do your business and dig a trench and make your own food. Nowadays we can do things online and get food delivered to us.
I know. So and
I'm guilty of it too.
Right.
Don't get me wrong.
Right. Like so much of that is like such a huge generational difference because the amount, this is true with college education, this is true with housing, but the amount of like a person's income that those two things occupied was just way less in the 50s and the 60s as it is now. Mm-hmm. Like just the way that the market has changed. And it is like a lot of it is we are in this housing crunch, like as a country, and I think as Winona specifically, we're in a housing crunch because of the housing bubble in 2008, right? Like that made it really hard for builders to keep building. And so there's just been this like decrease in supply. And so because decrease in supply, like the cost of each asset goes up. And so it's just this combination of like, it's harder for folks of an older generation to see that of like, because you remember your starting wage, you hear people talking about $15, $20 an hour for like menial jobs. Like how can someone not afford this home? Well, it's like the starting price of the home has gone up way more than inflation would allow for the starting price of your home when you first bought it. Right, like the percentage of a person's income that has to go towards housing now is like way higher than it was in the 60s and 70s. And I think like we're in a big hole with that. And I think like there's so much, right? Like these conversations, like affordability is the big buzzword and things like that. And I think what we talk about when we talk about that is like, do things seem fair, right? Like I'm doing the things I was supposed to do. I'm like, I have a good job. I went to college. I'm like, why can I not afford to buy a home anymore, right? And like, there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think for the home specifically, the way we get ourselves out of that hole is just like increasing the amount of units to kind of fix that lopsided of just not enough building in the past 20 years. And so I think like, I understand those concerns for sure, but like, it feels like the economy now is a ladder where like folks our age and younger feel like they have to like battle for every step of that ladder. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of folks don't see that the economy that they grew up in the 70s and 80s was often like an escalator, where you were like being brought up the escalator kind of regardless of how much work you were putting into it. Some people were bounding up that escalator, were working super hard and were able to take huge steps. But like for the most part, like if you bought an apartment in Manhattan in 1960 and you sold it in 2000, like you just sat on that asset and you made bank, right? Like there's just that like dynamic.
And that's why real estate is such a good investment for young people. Well, you know, and I want to go off of what you were just saying because even 10 years ago, so I've been doing real estate for this is my 12th year I'm on. And when I first started, the average in Winona, so I'm only speaking for Winona, folks, not speaking for anything else. When I first started selling homes in Winona in about 14-ish, the average first-time home buyer house was like 125, 130-ish, maybe 150-ish. Now I've noticed, just because I've been working with similar, we're talking 2 to 225, I feel, is that first-time home buyer range at the moment. So I can attest that it keeps going up, but I also said that just before we were talking on this last topic that, you know, your real estate investment kind of goes up 10 grand a year. And now here we are 12 years later, and roughly it's almost 100 grand difference in price. But a question I have for you, do you think it's easier for young kids to make more money nowadays? Because nowadays I know, and this is not a part of your topic.
No, yeah.
Just a question I have for you.
Well, I mean, I think to your point, right? Like 10 years ago, is the average pay in Winona, has the average pay in Winona increased by 100 grand in the last 10 years? Right?
No, I would not say that for sure.
Like, I think, I think it has. And I think, like this is, again, one of the reasons why I am running for office of just like, you know, there is like there's this sense, and I think that is accurate, of like things just don't feel fair. And I think like so much of it gets abstracted in a lot of ways, but like, there's just like the wealth distribution in our country is like the most extreme that it's ever been.
Sure.
So just like on a very objective level, like it feels like our government has like really prioritized people with a lot of money making more money super easily. That has been the priority, and that like naturally comes at the expense of like making it harder for folks who have less money to get by. So I spent 5 years, roughly give or take 5 years, living and working with folks that were struggling with homelessness. And like and have been on SNAP and Medicaid myself. It's just super expensive being poor, right? Like if you don't have that much money, things just get like more and more expensive. And it's like super hard to get out of those holes. And it's because like there's just, you know, like cost of living, again, like these are buzzwords that a lot of folks are talking about now, but like all these like basic things have gotten more and more expensive. And it's because in the past we've just, I think we've allowed our economy to kind of tip super lopsided that way. And like even, you know, I think you're absolutely right. Real estate's a great investment. But even for myself, I graze cows, I farm during the summer.
Okay.
And so there would have been no way for me that I could have afforded to buy a farm doing what I do. in this area. Like so much for farming, especially, you have to like be born into it and like inherit it from a family member. And again, speaking to how weird and amazing Winona is, I was able to find a land trust south of town. So we own 500 acres with 7 other families, and I rent 60 of those acres to graze cows on.
Okay.
And then I own the house that I live in and kind of the acre that it sits on, but we own the rest of the land with other folks. So it's like a non-traditional land ownership structure.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm not going to be able to turn around and sell my house at 10, it's not going to appreciate $10,000 a year. So we're like kind of putting most of our investments in other places since we don't have a real estate's not our investment. But it has allowed me, because of this non-traditional land ownership, has allowed me to like live this lifestyle that I want, which is like living on a farm, grazing cows, managing land in a way that I think is really exciting. But I've had to do it in a way that is like non-traditional. And because Winona's weird in the way it is, there's 2 land trusts in the county, right? Or land co-ops. So like there's ways that I think folks of our generation or younger are getting around it. But like, I think it's just like fundamentally I feel like we need to make things more fair for like more folks.
Sure. Well, yeah, and what you're doing is a lot different than what a lot of people are doing. You're doing something that not everyone wants to do, which is grazing cattle. And that sounds like the opposite of what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's like a lot, Oh, but I love it. Like really, like it's wild. Like watching cows eat grass, like I can just like feel all the stress leave my body.
Really?
Oh, I love it. Like watching cows eat grass is just like, it really just like, it makes me, it's like so great. And so like, I graze cows in a way, I rotationally graze them. So like try to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere with kind of the way that I manage them, but I improve the water quality. And I also like improve the wildlife habitat. And so like, I don't hunt, but we have a lot of hunting that happens on our farm, but like, it's like, I don't hunt because I farm because I want to spend like as much time as possible outside, like as possible.
Sure.
And so I don't really camp that much during the summer either, because it's just like, that's why I do farm work, is that I love being outside. I love like working with my hands. Yeah. I love like managing the land in that way. And the land ownership, it is non-traditional, but I often explain to folks that it's like owning a condominium, but instead of owning a building together with a condominium association, I own 500 acres of like amazing land. And then I own my own like individual house, so like in a condo, people own their own unit and then own a building together.
Well, and your investment with that is going to be different than what I was talking about, which is in the town area, because now you're talking about like if someone wants to buy your house, they're going to get an acre of land, and then they might even be with multiple other people with 500 acres. That is going to be a different investment than just a regular old standard single family house. You're talking agricultural type stuff. And there's only nowadays, and I'm one of those people, I'm a convenience person. I don't want to go and make my own food and raise my own cattle. I don't want to do all that. And that's totally, that's on me too. I think a lot of younger folks, they find that, like me, convenience is awesome, but it comes at a fee, because we have subscriptions for literally every single thing. I could probably have a subscription to have you come deliver me eggs or something. Who knows? But you have Netflix, you have Hulu, and then you know what? I was just mad about this last week. I was talking to my buddy, and we're talking about wrestling, because we're professional wrestling fans. And I'm like, I was trying to watch Survivor Series. What was it on? He goes, oh, it was on ESPN Plus the app. I'm like, I don't have that one. He's like, oh, well, that's where it was. I'm like, so I have to have this app to watch this app to watch this, and that app to watch that. And all of a sudden you look at your bill and you're like, I'm into it for like $200. My cable bill is less than that.
Recreated cable, right? Like this was supposed to be the solution of like everything's on your computer. You don't have to like buy cable. It's just like, no, you have to pay way more in all these random subscriptions.
I know. I'm so frustrated with that. But I mean, I can understand how my money could go really fast if I'm not paying attention to that. Even though I could be making 15 times more than my, people before. All of a sudden now I got a subscription for a subscription for a subscription. And I'm like, holy shit. But anyways, that's beside the point. But I love that you are taking this housing thing to a very personal level, and you want everyone to have affordable housing, which I think a lot of people do. No matter how different everyone from blue, red, and everybody in between, I think everyone wants a person to have a place to live. But I think also people want to have a good place to live, and also landlords want to make money. So there's all this like balancing act of all this.
I know, right? Like that's the wild thing about housing in politics, is that like, especially in politics, everything is like framed as like all issues are lose-lose. Like we're all going to compromise. We're all no one's going to get anything that they want. But like housing really just feels like one of those issues where it's just like, yeah, actually we can all get what we want. Like my experience working with folks that were homeless, folks that were like, were with the kitchen table, folks no longer homeless, but like we're still advocating for housing. Like all those folks want to own a home. Like that is what folks want. And like you talk with you're right, like everybody else, people that own rentals, people that sell housing, like they also want folks to own homes, right? Like we all have the same goals, we all have the same desires. And like reality is, if like if more people own homes in Winona, it's gonna like make so many other aspects. Like it will help the schools, it'll help the universities, right? It'll help the businesses. Like, and so like there are so many solutions that are available to us. But again, like I think we're just limited in our imagination around it. Yeah.
I have a question for you because I know this is a hot topic right now.
Yeah.
St. Casimir's being a homeless shelter.
Oh,
that was huge. Now, you can say no comment if you don't want to talk about it.
So I was involved with that group. So I was part of the steering committee with Catholic Charities to help them. So Catholic Charities was losing the space that they were in. And so they were looking for a new space.
And that's the downtown corner spot that used to be, I think, Cheaters, Rodeo.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of bars.
I remember playing there in college in a band.
Okay,
yeah.
You were in a
and
band.
so that it was like weird, like walking by it as a homeless shelter.
It was corner spot, and I used to see people hanging out there. Yep. Okay. So that spot's being lost, and then they want to go to St. Casimir.
Yep.
Okay.
And so there's like, so again, like, I just posted a video about this on my own social media. So like, I understand people's concerns. Like I really understand, especially again, like talking about property values, like that's a huge concern. And like, you're talking about people's like savings and livelihood. Like I understand why people are concerned about that. But I think the thing that was like not included in the conversation was that like 2 blocks farther west from where St. Casimir's is where the Bethany and the Dan Corcoran House have been operating since the 90s.
Yeah, you were part of the Bethany House, right? What is the Bethany House specific?
So Bethany House, so the Dan Corcoran House no longer exists, but they operated for 30 years. The Dan Corcoran House was a homeless shelter for women and children. Bethany House was a homeless shelter for men. So we would have like 5 men living in the home, and we would do like a meal 5 days a week.
Gotcha.
And so the way that would work is that the volunteers, so I was one of the people running it, not getting paid, just getting my room and board filled, living with folks like struggling with homelessness.
Gotcha.
And so we like all these concerns around like creating a homeless shelter in the middle of a residential neighborhood would be super bad. It's like, I get those concerns. It has been happening in your neighborhood for the past 30 years and you did not know about it. So it's just like, I understand those concerns, but like they don't feel like they applied to that neighborhood at that specific time because of the history of the Catholic worker in that area.
So my question is, with Bethany House, is there some sort of structure with it though? Because I was reading up on it when we had talked about doing the interview, and it seemed like there was a big structure to it, which maybe that's different, because I'm just going to go off of my personal experience of driving downtown, looking at the warming shelter, the homeless shelter, and I just see people sitting outside, smoking a cigarette, laying on the ground. I can understand those concerns.
Totally.
But you said the Bethany House, you had no idea that was a thing. But there might have been more structure is what I'm getting at.
Yep. So I would say my experience of like running that is that people tend to take the culture and the attitude outside of the shelter. The culture and the attitude that you create in the shelter is the attitude that people take outside of it. Okay. So we like had a very clear, like these were the rules. Like this is the respect that you give. If you show up drunk, you were like asking you to leave. You show up high, like if you're on your phone, blah, blah, blah. Sure. And people tended to respect that and like would kind of bring that respectful attitude outside. And so like, one of the reasons why we're working alongside one of the reasons why there are more and more people helping out with Catholic Charities coming alongside that program is that I think that program lost that culture. Sure. Right. And like, so like we're part of a group. I was part of a group, and that group still exists. Of just like trying to get more and more folks to like show up to volunteer at Catholic Charities to change the culture that exists there. Gotcha. Because like, I like same thing. Like the engagement in office was just down the block from the warming center or the day center, and saw the same things as well. And it's like, I think the way that that is not an inherent necessity of a shelter. It's like part of the way that the shelter is run. Changing the culture inside the shelter and like changing kind of the volunteer and staffing structure can really help with that. So that's what Catholic Charities is trying to do now. And so it is like, I think the ask, like Catholic Charities needed that rezone to happen kind of as soon as possible so that they could like fully transition the new program into that building. However, like we are now like also going through this process of kind of like changing the staffing and volunteer structure. So I think if Catholic Charities was to ask in like 2 years to like have a rezone and was to like have built trust with a wider group of community partners during that time, it would be easier to have that ask happen.
Yes.
So I think part of it was like not complete. I think the city council made that decision not having full knowledge of like everything that had been happening in that neighborhood for the past 30 years.
Yep.
But I think the other part of it is that Catholic Charities just didn't have the time to do that kind of like coalition building, which is what normally needs to happen for like big decisions like that.
Yeah, and I totally get it because I know a lot of people that were up in arms about it, and rightfully so. I totally understand it because, I mean, like I said, I have seen what goes on downtown, and they're sitting outside of Heirloom Bistro, laying on the ground. I can't imagine Heirloom loved that either.
No.
But then I understood that there was, I think. This is what I heard on Facebook. So again, take it with a grain of salt. Obviously it's a residential neighborhood, but there's also a daycare around that area as well. So I would feel a little uncomfortable myself if I saw what I saw downtown happening into more of a residential neighborhood. I saw a lot of people also talking about the diocese building being for sale because I know it's for sale. It's on the market. They said that would be a way better fit. Now, granted, I don't know.
So I don't know all those details, but I was having some of those conversations with Catholic Charities, and essentially, I mean, it's accessibility and plumbing, right? Having to like build in an elevator system, having to like build in like a shower, and
they have to build in an elevator for it for homelessness.
Yes, accessibility.
What?
Yeah. Well, like again, right?
I feel like you should just be like, I'm just glad we got a building at this point,
right?
Especially I think these cold winter nights.
Yeah, I mean, right, that's the deal. Like, that's why zoning is so interesting, and these rules and things like that, right? Is that like the goal is good. I was just having this conversation with Wesley United Methodist. Like, they want to have a childcare. They've talked about having a childcare center on the second floor of their church because that's where they have childcare for the church. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like state regulation don't allow for a childcare center to be in the second floor of a building. It's like I understand.
Yes, I
understand where that is coming from, but the results, right? Like, I think that's whenever we talk about policy, whenever we talk about stuff, we need to be like thinking and looking at the results. And so like it's coming with a good intention of like, heaven forbid there to be a fire and like kids could not get out of the second floor window. It's like, I get that. But we are in the same way we are in a huge shorting for housing. We're in a similar shorting for childcare. The county is short 500 slots of childcare, right? So it's just like, I feel like there is more damage being done by the lack of childcare, by the lack of housing, by these like theoretical things. And so like, same with accessibility. The accessibility for the homeless shelter is more. I mean, it's at a state level in that like, if your homeless shelter is not accessible, you become less and less eligible for statewide grants.
Gotcha.
And so like the state is kind of tipping its finger on the scale there. Which, like, again, like, I understand that. Like, there's a large percentage of folks that are homeless and are in wheelchairs. Like, that's a, like, higher than normal percentage. But also at the same time, like, yeah, we got to, like, be focused on the results, thinking about, like, our folks in an emergency situation, like, how do we help these shelters out? And, yeah.
See, and going from my aspect, like children being on the second level, and here, actually, I used to work at St. Martin's Lutheran School, and before the new building they had, the old building is where I used to teach at when I first started. Mm-hmm. And my classroom, the 7th and 8th grade classroom, used to be, I think, the preschool / kindergarten room. Yeah. On the second level, because there was a bathroom in my closet, it was for the younger kids to go to the bathroom. So I totally get it. Like little kids, they're like not going to know what to do. So you have an adult trying to get kids out as fast as possible. Yeah. Whereas I feel like a homeless adult would know how to get out of a building if it's on fire. Right. And going off of your results rather than regulations, I think is kind of what we were talking about there. Yeah. That would make more sense. Like, even if there's not an elevator, at least they're not sitting out in -2-degree weather, dying. Right. Just be happy there's a building that suits whatever the needs are. Right. So I totally get that, but having regulations on that seems harsh on Minnesota's part too at the same time, because like, well, don't give us regulations, but we're trying to do something good for the humanity, you know,
Right.
like try not to do that. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to this.
Well, I think that's the, like, in my mind, like, so much of politics is like, I think especially in Minnesota, it's just like dictated by like partisan insiders, right?
Sure.
Where like the goal becomes like, oh, I want to be in this seat, so I'm a solid vote for this. Or like, oh, we want like, you know, we're kind of doing deal making and making sure that this person stays there because we'll know that they'll vote for the party line. But like,
Yeah.
I think so much what's exciting now, because of like, because people are tend to be really well informed because we have so much information out there. There is just like a clear lane to be focused on results, right? And be focused. And that, like, I think when you like start looking at those things, like what it means to be a Democrat or Republican gets a lot more mucky and like a lot muddier. Like, it's, in my mind, it's like, what are your values? Like, who are the people that you're fighting for? And are you like, do you have the track record of like pursuing those results for those folks?
Sure.
Like that, those should be their priorities. And I think there's just like way more people like that are in that like middle ground, like you described, of just like, you know, I read a research paper the other day that said like only 20, you know, they did the study where they gave different political positions, and only 20% of people were able to like attribute to what party actually said that.
Sure.
Or like most people just like aren't thinking about politics in these like super policy ways. I think they generally think about like how, like, what are the results? How can we help our community?
Yeah.
And that is why I'm running for state house, because I just feel like there's a huge need for that in Winona right now. And yeah, wanting to be a champion for affordability and for like creating more housing, creating more childcare.
Well, one thing actually, as us real estate agents, when
Yeah.
we do fundraisers, it's always for the warming house.
Yeah.
So all of our proceeds, whatever we do, like golf tournaments, stuff of that nature, we always take a donation. Then whatever the donation is actually goes to the warming house. So us as realtors actually are in on this too. We believe in helping out our fellow person in Winona for sure. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that maybe some people don't know is actually when we actually do donations, most everything that we ever donate to goes towards the warming shelter in Winona.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. I don't know if everybody knows that, but
Well, and yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and it is just like, again, like having, you know, for what's amazing. So when I was living at the Bethany House, the Catholic Worker, the Bethany House, Dan Corcoran House were the only shelters in the county. And I never thought that we would be in a position where we would have like a more robust shelter in the county. And now it seems clear that like everyone recognizes like, oh, this fulfills a huge need in the county.
gotcha.
And the exciting thing about the warming center, the day center, is that like we live in a community where like if we build a shelter for 25 beds, we will end homelessness in Winona County. Like, you can't say that in Rochester, you can't say that in La Crosse. Like, so like the community coming around and supporting the warming center like the realtors do, like that's huge because it has like such a huge direct effect on folks. And like, again, like if there's a humanity side of it, which is like great to talk about, but like also like if you look at those 20 people that like are not going to the emergency room, that are not sleeping in someone's garage, that are not getting contacted by the police officers, like it saves the community so much money just by having this like safe, warm space where folks can just like
Sure.
be instead of someplace else.
Well, the last thing I want to go off of is you are running for House District 26A, right?
Yep.
And you said at the beginning what you're running for specific? Say it
State
again.
House 26A in 2026.
Okay, 2026. So that would be meaning next November, right?
Correct.
Okay. So who are you running against?
Yeah. I will be running against Representative Aaron Rapinski.
Okay. And he's been on the podcast before as well.
Nice.
Is there
Friend
any-
of the pod.
What's that?
Friend of the pod.
He's a friend of the pod. He's a friend of myself as
Yeah.
well. He comes to a lot of our housing meetings here too
nice.
and talks about things that are going on at the state level, giving us the actual, not a hearsay Facebook post. He gives us the actual, here's what's going on. Here's when we're in session. Here's what we're doing.
Yep.
He tells us all that. Is there anybody that you're running against democratically to
get the endorsement.
yeah, to get the endorsement? I
No.
guess?
Nope. Not currently. It's just
Okay.
me.
So it'd be you versus Aaron Rapinski. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how did you decide to get into politics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, I've been involved with advocacy stuff. So I came here for school in 06 and I was going to go into pre-med, had this like great plan. And then I moved into the Bethany House, was going to like take a year off before I like applied for med schools, and like fell in love with Winona and fell in love with service work It completely changed my life. And so like for my entire adult life, I've been working on these passion projects, doing service work in the community, and realized in 2022 when I ran for state senate that a lot of the work that I had been doing had the same like common root cause of just like bad policy written by policymakers that didn't feel very accountable to their communities.
Sure.
So wanting to use politics as a way, and like that's why I love doing politics, because I just feel like politics is the way that we talk about things that are really important to us. And so like I got into politics as like, I think this is a great way to improve my community. But then as I started doing it, it was just like, it's just such a great way to connect with folks about like, it's like we talk about fairness, we talk about equality. We also talk about like being able to get ahead or be able to like achieve your dreams, your ambition. Like those are often like become political conversations, and like talking about like people's like really deep dreams. And those are just like exciting conversations to have. So that's how I love doing it.
So do you have any flack from family members or friends that are like, I don't agree with you at all on this? Because I assume you have to, because I always tell people and think in my mind, if you're going to get into politics, 50% of the people are going to hate you.
Yeah.
And 50% of the people are going to love you.
Yeah.
So how does it go for you on a personal level with friends, family, things of that nature?
Right. And it's like even worse for me because like I don't like Democrats that much either, and I'm running on the Democratic side, right? Like so I have like more than 50% of people that don't like me. Where like I'm running because I really feel like we need to pull the Democratic Party back to its farm labor roots.
Sure.
And so when I got into politics, right, like so much of, which is why it's hard for normal folks to get into politics, like, because so much of it is like, okay, you want to run for office? Great, you need to raise 80 grand. And it's like, where do you get that money? You call your friends and family. And so when I ran for state senate in 2022, I had been a farmer and had like lived in homeless shelters. So all my friends were other farmers and like other like do-gooders with no cash. So it was really hard to raise that money just because I was having conversations with folks that like don't have that much extra cash laying around.
Sure.
And it was also coming from folks of like feeling like this was like, oh, I thought you were into advocacy work. Like, what is like explaining the change into like having to have these conversations of explaining the change into politics, right? Like we were having, saying like the reason why there's like this homelessness problem in Winona is like related to these like concrete policy decisions that people have made for our community that we did not have a say in, right? And I think we need to bring that voice to St. Paul.
Sure.
So like and then I grew up, as a Republican, and was a Republican most of my life through college. So like calling my aunts and uncles and telling them I was running as a Democrat were hard conversations. But it was like, like making those fundraising calls, but like it meant the world to me that they would still chip in $20.
Sure.
To be like, I don't know if I agree with you 100% on this issue, but like I remember when you were 5 years old, like I know you have a really good heart and I know that you do an amazing job in this. So here's some money, even though I don't necessarily want you to get elected. Like it's huge. Like that's like, that's why like those family connections are so important.
Sure.
But yeah, I feel like, it is just like so much of politics has become so hard for folks to talk about because there's just this sense of like, it's just the party system. Folks are only out there to like improve their party and not improve people's lives. And like, again, like it's why I love doing this work, because it's just like, yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. Like,
well, I think a lot of it, what happens is a lot of people think if you're left Democrat, you are all about this XYZ. Weird stuff, and same thing if you're Republican red and you're all about this weird stuff, when actually the most people I meet are down the middle,
right,
with a slight lean to the right or a slight lean to the left on certain aspects. Some people are going to probably listen to this and they're going to disagree with the housing conversation we had, and there's some people that are going to listen to this and go, yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So as you said, you're like, when I was younger, I was a Republican. Now I'm actually running as a Democrat. But you said earlier, I'm kind of right down the middle. I think as are most people. Most people want to help out their fellow man.
Yeah,
I think. And I don't. And sometimes when you look at one side or the other, they go, oh, that's weird on that side, or that policy is weird on that side. Whereas actually most of us are very wanting humanity to help humanity out, help out our fellow man within our community to a certain extent. My question for you is, I've had Aaron Rapinski on before. What are you running? What is your running? What would it be called? What are you running on, I guess?
Yeah,
is what they always
platform.
say.
Yeah.
What's your platform? Yes. And what are the differences between what Aaron's running on and what you're running on?
Yeah, for sure. I've met Aaron a couple of times. I think he's a super nice guy. I think I can do a lot in that seat, and he just happens to be in it. So, right, like, if not just to say, I don't feel like I'm running against Aaron. It's just like, this is a position that I really want to do, and I have a lot of vision for. And really, like, I want to make Winona like a more affordable place to raise a family, to grow, to buy a home, and to retire. And
sure.
Like, I think that we can grow Winona together. And the way that we do that is, like, we double down on housing, we double down on childcare, and, like, we make Winona like a more affordable place to live. Childcare, housing, insurance. There's, like, lots of great, I could geek out on all this stuff. And, like, I feel like I have this history of, like, working and advocating in the community. And I want to, like, spend every day, like, pounding the pavement, like, working super, super hard for this, like, vision of Winona that I feel like a lot of folks have, of just, like, this is an amazing community. It's where I chose to raise my family. I want to, like, make it the best community possible.
Sure.
And, like, it's been my experience of, like, looking across the political landscape for the past 2 years working on housing, is that there's just, like, weirdly enough, there's just, like, not elected officials in this area that are, like, banging the drum on housing, that are banging the drum on childcare. Like, it's always, everyone knows it's a huge issue. We're always talking about it. But, like, when it comes down to, like, what are you going to do? It's always like, well, I don't know. We'll, like, sit on our hands and see what happens.
Sure.
And, like, yeah, like I said, like, not only, like, those affordability things, but, like, I really, like, I want to pull the Democratic Party back to its farm labor roots. I want to get it out of St. Paul and start working. I'm a farmer. I have, like, huge concerns about farming policy and, like, huge ways that we can better address and make it start saving our family farms.
Sure.
And I think Aaron, he's a nice guy. I just, my experience of interacting with him is he just kind of seems like a placeholder for the GOP in this area. And, like, I don't want to be a placeholder for the Democrats, right?
Okay.
Like, I want to, like, push hard. I want to fight to, like, create a new vision for what the Democratic Party can mean in this area.
Sure. Yeah, I totally understand that too. And, when it comes down to it, most politics, especially when it comes down to local level, they make it in the mainstream media. They make it seem like everyone hates each other.
Yeah.
When I don't really see a whole lot of that. When so you just said, Aaron a little bit, not a whole bunch, but you said, I have my own policies, and he just happens to be in the seat that I want to take over.
Yeah.
You don't go, I hate him. He does this. This is what's wrong with that. You didn't say any of that kind of stuff. You just said, I want to change what the Democratic Party is and go back to its farm labor roots, which actually is probably back to when my grandpa used to be a Democrat because he was a union man.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different from what the mainstream media tells me.
Right.
Tells all of us probably, is actually quite different than what it used to be, because my grandpa was born in 28.
Right.
So we're talking 28 to he passed away in 2020. Like, that's a totally different Democrat Party within there. And actually, if you go back and read history, there's a whole bunch of different political parties. I mean, we have the two-party system, it seems like, but there are some really small ones that usually never get any credit. But actually, if you go way back to, like, when the Republicans actually started, it was, like, I think the Republican Federalist Party.
Right.
And then the Democrat was there was a whole bunch of things. But you just came in here and you told us, like, hey, I just have these certain policies that I believe in, and he just happens to be in the way of what I want to achieve. And you didn't come in here and bash anything. And I think a lot of people, when it comes down to it, they don't go, oh, yeah, well, I hate that person because they are a Democrat or because they're a Republican. They don't come in and say that usually. They come in and they actually probably, if you talked, you go right down the middle and be like, yep, I agree with that. Yep. Oh, I don't agree with that. Sorry. And that's where it goes off.
Yeah, I was just explaining this to my 5-year-old daughter. So I'm a Quaker, which is
holy smokes.
Yeah,
That's way back when.
It's way back when. It's like actually a super modern religion, but not that weird. But like one of the key things that we believe is that like no person is intrinsically evil, right? Which I think is like what a lot of people believe. And so like it was this like talking with my daughter about like Santa Claus coming and like being like, oh, bad kids don't get presents, and it's just like, well, like no kid is bad. Like they may make bad choices and be annoying, but like they're still going to get presents. Like they're good kids. And like really like you have to like, I believe that Aaron Rapinski is fundamentally a good person. He's in the job because like he's trying to do like what he thinks is good. Like I disagree with that vision. And I think like I have a vision that I think more people in Winona agree with. So like it's my job to run that campaign and to convince people of that.
Sure.
And it's just like no one's the villain in their own story. Right?
Well,
like,
the one thing I just heard from you and knowing Aaron personally, you both want what's best for Winona.
Yeah.
You guys just have slightly different outlooks, and that's okay. That's okay because one person's going to say, "Yep, I think this is best for Winona," and another person say, "I think this is best for Winona." But both of you have the best interest in Winona, and for our community. And granted, we're like 26,000 people, so we're not like a huge community out there. And I think that's fantastic to have that. I wouldn't really want to run for politics. I don't think. I don't think I'd want all the hate that I see because I see the DFL post very negative things about Aaron, and I go, gosh, I know that guy personally. I don't think he's like that at all. And I've never heard him ever speak like that, ever at all. And I have a feeling if someone posted something negative about you and it was on the Republican side, I'd be like, boy, I guess I don't know you as well, but just getting to know you briefly, I don't think you'd be like, yep, that's, fire and brimstone, devil's horns coming out of your head.
Right.
That wouldn't be who you are, I don't think.
Well, and so much of it is like, again, like I think a lot of it is like Winona has a history of electing folks to the state level that like take a lot of pride in bucking their party.
Sure.
Like Gene Plowski has for the past 38 years, like has taken a huge amount of joy in like pushing back against the Democrats. I ran against Jeremy Miller in 2022, and like to his credit, he has like pushed back against his party a lot too. And it takes a lot of like courage to do that. And that's why I'm running, is that like I think we need a representative to do that. I don't necessarily see Aaron doing that. And then like, so as far as the like, the Democrats or Republicans saying these things about folks, a lot of that stuff is this whole independent expenditure world where like, as long as an outside group isn't formally connected with or communicating with a candidate, they can spend as much money on a race as they want, and they can spend as much money saying things as they want. And I think that whole system is like that was a federal decision with Citizens United, and I feel like so much of the toxicity in our politics and so much of like why people have started tuning out is just because we've opened the floodgates to allow all this money to come into politics and to like really try to polarize each other in that way. And I feel like that is kind of like that to me, like all this big money in politics is like a lot of the core reasons for that. Yep. And if I get elected, like in Minnesota, like the Democrats have not pushed hard to undo that, which we could, like, and that would be like a core thing that I want to like fight for as well. Of just like, we have Minnesota's great in the way that we have campaigns have spending caps that they can agree to, where a campaign can't spend a certain amount of money. That doesn't exist for outside groups. Like we could totally pass a law to make that exist for outside groups. But like the way that it is set up now is that both Democrats and Republicans benefit from all these outside groups being able to pour money in. And it's just like, it's not good for community. It's not good for politics, and it's not good for all of us.
Well, Dan, as we're starting to wind down here, is there anything that we didn't touch on that we missed out on?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like housing in Winona is like such an interesting topic.
Yes.
So like for my campaign specifically, so like the connection to housing is like I am committing to, if I get elected, I am committing to passing a bonding bill that includes 100 units of deeply affordable housing in downtown Winona. Okay. Specifically, like from reading and like looking at the housing study, we didn't talk about move over senior housing. Like, oh man, I don't want to geek out on that. But like, the county housing study looked at specifically seniors that are on a fixed income. We need 100 units to kind of like meet that goal. meet that gap. And so like if I get elected, I will include a bonding bill. 100 units is another Valley View tower. We can build another Valley View tower downtown. So we'll include state money for that. And like senior housing is super, it's really like a 2-for-1 investment in the sense that if you build 100 units of senior housing, those seniors that are living in their homes right now, they might be overburdened with that home ownership. They can't keep up with stuff. If they move into that senior housing, then they free up those homes in the middle of the city.
Sure.
Which are then like more than likely probably great starter homes for families. So like by just creating one building, you can solve a lot of big problems. And like there's not always a role for government money in housing and things like that. But like I think like deeply affordable housing, especially for seniors, like that's an instance where like it won't pencil out for most developers. It makes sense for the state to come in. And I'm also committing to like fully funding a child care center in Winona area public schools.
Okay.
And like, again, like those two specific promises, like, I'm trying to demonstrate to folks of like, I'm going to work for these things. Like,
sure,
it's very hard to commit to specific things in a campaign just because like I would be one of 67 state representatives, but like I am putting that out there as my goal. And like, by golly, I'm going to work as hard as I can to get to it.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So, dude, did we cover everything then? I want to make sure.
There's always going to be more stuff, but yeah.
Well, you can always come on for part 2 like everybody else wants to.
Yeah, I would love to. There's all this other, we could talk about other stuff as well, but yeah.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much, not only for coming on in here and taking an hour and a half out of your day, talking about what you're running for, but also talking about the Winona housing in a personal aspect, also going over your background, which is awesome to hear about too, so people understand who you are as a person, because there's a lot of people that go out there and they have a lot of hearsay, and I know how that goes with everything that's out in Winona. We're a small community, but everyone has their opinion. But it's great for you to come in here and tell it from your aspect, from your own personal life. So I appreciate that very much. Also, I appreciate you bringing in the beverage of Ida Graves from your brother-in-law. This is really good. I mean, you've
gone through 2 glasses already.
2 small glasses.
Nice.
I would say I went through 3 fingers, I bet, of it. But it's really good. You hardly even know it's there. But I really appreciate you coming on in, taking a little bit of time out of your day. It's been really fun talking to you.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Sure. Same here.
And for those who are listening, please like, share, subscribe, and also share this, because you never knew who was coming on next. We could have someone talking about wrestling, someone talking about housing, someone talking about their own business. We never know what's coming on next. But for those who are listening, please, again, share, like, subscribe, 5-star this. And Dan, I want to give you a big cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
And we'll see you guys next week.